the only one that is gonna look at it.
Okay.
So unless you wanna.
No, I understand.
Release it. So, alright, so an introduction about you. It doesn't matter from where, from that moment you feel it's relevant for the readers to know about you.
That was the most difficult one to think about. But, one, I'm from New Jersey. I'm from Camden, New Jersey. Camden, New Jersey is not necessarily a place that most people like to claim because the result of many people that are born there turns out not to have so much of a good ending. So born in Camden, New Jersey, grew up in the city streets, typical story, exposed of everything you could possibly imagine, drugs, death, murder, not having all the things that most children have. And at the age of 9, my grandmother came and got me. And she wanted to save me, pretty much. So she moved me from Camden, New Jersey to Norfolk, Virginia. And that's where, in Hampton Roads, Virginia, it was Portsmouth, Virginia, actually, but Hampton Roads, Virginia is where I spent the, I like to call the meat and the sandwich of my life, which was from 9 years old all the way up to maybe 28. And during that time, you gotta understand, I was a city boy, experienced a total different dynamic of environment, and now moving into a house with an 81-year-old woman that goes to church matter of fact, she went to church 4 times a week.
Wow.
You know, and that's a total shock from a young city boy, but I had to conform. And what was terrible then, what I really didn't like about that new environment would be the growth point of my entire life, because living with her taught me spirituality, it taught me commitment. You gotta get up 5 o'clock in the morning and pull weeds out the garden. It taught me a lot of things of discipline and substance that I wasn't raised on in New Jersey. So as my grandmother passed away, I was 20 years old. I was faced with the challenge that I had 2 children being born, Michael and Miguel. I have 2 sons. And so I'm a 20-year-old kid, my grandmother passed away, and I had nothing. So that was a turning point in my life, and that was at the same point that I discovered music. So I could have decided at that moment to go result back to drugs, is what I experienced when I was growing up, seeing it. I could have gave myself every reason to do anything because I had no one, no family, no anything at that time. And I just chose to fight hard, man. It's the truth. I chose to fight hard. I knew I had these 2 little baby boys that I had to figure out how to take care of. And by any means necessary, and I'll leave it like that, I did what I had to do to take care of those 2 boys. And music was my saving grace. Everything that I have ever experienced, I used music as a platform just to write it out on paper. Didn't want anyone to hear it, didn't think if anything would come out of it, but then all of a sudden I started connecting to other people that did music, and the universe has a powerful way of when you are where you're supposed to be, it just takes off. And I've learned that through that process, that when you're not where you're supposed to be, you can try and you can have all the money in the world, but it doesn't go anywhere. You have very little resources when you are where you're supposed to be, and it takes off. So to fast forward that, here we go. Music became a piece of my life. I eventually entered deeper into the music business, and the music took me all the way through my 30s. But of course, at that point, I met a mentor in my life that changed everything in that total dynamic, and he invested in my career and took me further. Well, he also encouraged me to give it up.
Wow.
He encouraged me to give it up.
So is that a person you would consider the real impact in your life?
Absolutely.
As a musician?
So I grew up with not the typical household dynamic of mother and father, and etc. But you know, God has a way of sending you the right people. And during my music career, in my late 20s, I met a gentleman who, at the time, believed in me. And that's what he did. He did anything necessary to show me that, listen, you have talent, you have some other gifts that I'll reveal to you later, but I'm going to invest in you. So he took time, which was his greatest investment, a little bit of money, and he put it in my career. His name is Remo Butler, or rather General Remo Butler.
Is that your father?
He's the man that I choose to call my father now, absolutely. And he basically unofficially adopted me as his son, as a person that he wanted to lead and guide. He moved me from Virginia to Tampa, Florida. My record began to take off at that time, but through the years, in hindsight, if you look from then to now, I would not have been as strong in business as I have if I wouldn't have had someone as knowledgeable and powerful as he was. Think about it. He's led armies of thousands and thousands and thousands of people. He's led huge corporations of 50 plus thousand employees. So to have access to someone like that, to be able to pick his brain, you can ask him, is the next decision correct or wrong? That was a pretty powerful gift that God gave him. And he's my father, he's my mentor, and he's one of my best friends to this day.
Perfect. So he's been your mentor. So how did this person impacted you the most? Might give you an example of the impact that he created in your life.
Well, I'll tell you a pinnacle. At the age of about 29, 30, my records were doing well on the radio. I had 2 singles out there, Party Naughty and Dixie Cut. And on the mixtape scene, to know me is to know that I made $500,000 at a very young age by selling mixtapes out of the trunk. I even believe that I am the sole reason that Walmart now has security patrol in their parking lots, because they did not have security patrol in their parking lots back then. I would gather college students that were mass comm majors, take them on a road with me from Friday to Sunday, pay them $250, and I required them all to sell 50 CDs within that time. So if that's 50 CDs each times 10, that's 500 CDs, that's $5,000 a weekend. So for me, that's really how I built my music career, is by just putting out mixtapes to pay for the studio time, and then I got a record deal. So bringing this back to my father, he knew that music was great, but by his experience in a lot of different businesses, he also knew that the chances of it being successful is slim to none. So like his own child, he didn't make me do anything, he led by example. And when a young man needs a man in his life, not for to tell him what to do, but to watch how he moves, so he can see that's how a man moves. And by my observation of what he had done, I began to naturally change without thinking that I was changing. So a pinnacle point is when he told me, he said, Miguel, you ever thought about going to college? Now mind you, I'm 31. I was a high school dropout. I never even thought about college, that never even crossed my mind. I was doing well in music, I was sharp, I was street savvy, I was successful, I was making money, but he said at the dinner table, have you ever thought about going to college? And I said, no, why you ask that? And I'll never forget, and he said, this is some good chicken. He never even replied to why he asked me that question. But it was like he planted a seed in my head, and it could not leave my head. So at the time I was working on a new mixtape, and I decided just to enroll in college. Don't ask me why, something just said do it. So long story short, I enrolled in college, I enrolled at a community college, and that's where I began. And then years later, I not only graduated with an international business degree, another one in business strategic management, and another one in business management, but I got a 4.0 and never had a B. So I graduated college, top of my class. I was president of the International Honor Society, which is the smart people. And when I graduated, I remember him saying to me, now let me ask you a question. If I had told you to pull up your pants, speak better, hang around this person and this person, would you have done it? I said, no. He said, you're right. I had to slowly show you the benefits of being able to do these things. So because of that, it landed me later on in life in some of the top businesses. And I remember I started at one company in the cruise industry, making some money, and then I worked at another company. And then the type of companies I began to work at, and I'm talking senior level executive positions, responsible for a lot of revenue. All that came from his mentorship and guidance, and it ultimately changed my life, because now that provided a stable platform for me to be able to provide for my family. But somehow music, I left it alone. And that's the story that I'm sure will unfold with your questions.
Right.
But he changed my life. He changed my life. I would have never had access until this day. Can you imagine someone of his caliber that I can call up? My daughter, that is her grandfather. She knows nothing else.
Wow.
That's all she knows. That's her
And they know
grandfather.
personally, I mean, they actually, I mean,
Listen,
his lives.
5 times a week.
Ah,
I speak to him 5 times a week. He lives in Tampa, Florida. He recently had my little brother 10 years ago. No, it's family. And no one looks at us and thinks otherwise. He could sit right here in front of you and you would never think that I didn't meet him, that we weren't blood. So God sent me a mentor and a father at the same time, and that's important. We all need that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Now, how as far as your music, where do you think these great ideas come from in you? What's the inspiration behind it, your music?
The inspiration from music, that's a great question. It comes from experience first, because if you haven't lived, you don't have much to talk about. It comes from people watching, from seeing society and elements around me and becoming inspired off of those inspirations. And I don't know if you want to put this, but I call it toilet tricks. It also comes from the bathroom. So when you're in the bathroom, you're in your most vulnerable, simple state when you're using it. And the most incredible ideas have been birthed when you're in that moment. I assure you, it's one of the most incredible things. I have left moments in the bathroom and went and made some incredible business deals or anything. It's the moment where you're doing nothing. And that's where it comes from. So I use that as a metaphor to say, and also my most important one is travel. I've traveled in over 125 countries.
Okay.
And when you see life through the other person's lens, you get a totally different appreciation for life itself, for the way people move, their culture, how they operate, how they connect with one another. And when you come back as a creative, whatever you do as a creative, you now see through a totally different scope. Your window is very large. And I like to think that's where my inspiration comes from.
So being vulnerable,
Being vulnerable.
experience and traveling.
Experience and travel, absolutely.
That's awesome. So which is most important to you? Mission, core values, or vision? Mission, core values, or vision? Which one is more important to you?
Core values is most important to me. Because vision you can't have. You can't go out and buy it. You either have vision or you don't. That's the unfortunate part about vision. But if you have vision, you have a gift. Core values, even if you're not given them, you can work hard at developing those core values. And without those, the mission doesn't matter and the vision is useless.
What is one characteristic that you believe every leader should possess?
Empathy. I truly believe that real leadership should possess empathy. If there's anything that I have also gained a strong skill set in outside of music is leadership. I've held leadership positions at several strong companies, and it was my ability to lead that produced the result, whether it was sales growth or enhanced performance. And it comes from my ability to have empathy because I know what it feels like not to have anything. I know what it feels like to struggle. I know what it feels like to desire things that seem far-fetched. And I know what it's like to feel to almost want to throw in the towel and give up. So as a leader, when you have empathy and you're able to really connect with the person on that level, you work really hard to show them that although it may seem a little dark, there's light at the end of the tunnel. And sometimes you got to go through darkness a little bit more to appreciate the sunshine. And for me, I see it in today's culture, is that people have positions, but they're not leaders. Leaders have to have something that's built in them. That's why the argument of, are leaders born or can they be created? It's always communicated. But I truly believe that you can develop a really strong following when they believe that the leader is strong, sure, but they have to feel. And if they don't feel, I think it's very difficult to be a leader.
So is that what you think is the biggest challenge today that leaders are facing? Or what do you think is the biggest challenge all these leaders are facing today? Or you as a leader?
What I believe is many people are in leadership positions, but they didn't get there because they were strong leaders, right? Life is about who you know, not what you know. So sometimes you can achieve a status or you can be placed in a position due to your connection and affiliation of someone else. Why? Because who you know is paramount in this world that we live in. And the more that life continues to evolve, who you know is even more so important. And it's not really about skill set. They're very intelligent, creative. Some of the best creative and artistic people are out there on the street homeless because they never had the shot, they never had the opportunity, and they didn't know the right person. So the leaders that we know as leaders to be in certain companies, I just think that they lack. Many of them lack the real core characteristics and elements of what makes a strong leader. Because maybe they got there for their own personal connections, not because they worked their way up to get there, and they are true effective leaders.
What about mistakes leaders make? What do you think, what's the most frequently mistake leaders make?
I believe that most leaders, in my experience, the mistake that they often make is making decisions for an organization based off of friendships or relationships, and not based off of what's best for the organization and the company and the future life pulse of the company. I think that's a very strong mistake, in addition to making emotional decisions.
Emotional decisions, yeah, for sure. Can you explain the impact, if any, that social media networking has made on you personally?
Listen, I come from a day and age where you walk out your house and if you want to figure out where a restaurant is downtown, you get on your bicycle, you walk, you catch the bus, or if you have a vehicle, you go find it. If someone gave you directions, you have to have the mental capacity to be able to remember those directions. If you wanted to go see a friend, you went over their house, knocked on their door, and you communicated with that person. If you wanted to do business, you knocked on that door and you beat that door down. You went door to door to door to door to door until you built a network of people. It took real hard work during that time. And I'm still a fairly young man, but I'm fortunate enough to have come from both sides. I've seen the change of how technology has enhanced and affected us. I lived when there was none. There was no cell phone. I came up in an era where the two-way pager was like a godsend, right? But now no one wants to carry that cloaky thing. I mean, we're walking around with computers in our hands, and that ultimately has paved the way for social media. So now what can that do, right? You ask, how does that benefit? Unbelievable. I can reach out and touch someone in Hong Kong. I can reach out and touch someone in Australia. I can reach out and touch someone back here. I can do business. I can change currency. I can do anything that I want. Invest in foreign markets. I can build business in other countries through intermediaries in the blink of an eye, at the click of a button. Social media may have its perils, and indeed it does. But what it has done is what we like to call the democratization of information. It has given you an ability not only to promote yourself, but to connect with people at one drop at light speed around the world. Now with that comes some disadvantages, because if it was only you, great. And the first movers in social media are the benefactors. But now you have 7 billion people in the world, and a good chunk of those people are online. So now what happens is, for the tech people in the industry, it opens up an opportunity for them to make so much money. But for the person trying to advertise themselves, you have a long line of standing, and unless you're clever and you're savvy and you have the money, you're going to remain at the back of that line. So.
Okay. So what advice would you give someone going into leadership or into a leadership position for the first time?
To know your stuff. First, you got to believe in yourself. And that's an interesting question because it's very broad. But if someone's, repeat that question again?
What advice would you give someone going into a leadership position for the first time?
Got it. The best advice I can give you walking into a leadership the first time is understand that you will be scared, and that's okay. Do not walk in thinking that you have this all figured out and you know everything that you're going to do, because that is a recipe for failure. Richard Branson said it best. If you're giving an opportunity and you don't know what you're doing, take the opportunity anyway and figure it out. So you have to understand that you're not going to know what's before you, but the best thing you can do is connect with people. Have a deep-rooted passion for helping people, because that's what a leader really does. A leader doesn't stand at the front of the pack and pull it. A leader is in the back in the trenches fighting with the people to get to the front. Leaders are servants. If you ask me what makes a strong leader, is that they're a servant. They serve their people, not necessarily always tell them what to do and so forth. So when walking into a leadership position, you have to care about people. And if you care about people, that translates into corporate culture or small business startup culture, and that translates into your product, and that product translates to your consumer. You can tell an incredible organization all the way at the bottom before it through to the product. But what happens sometimes is we in a world, since you were talking about media, as life evolves, we're that much more disconnected, and people care less. There are a lot of hurt people in the world, which is why I do music, which is why we create the music that we create, because if hurt people, and people are disconnected, do you think that leaders won't have that same trait?
Right.
Yeah. People quit jobs. Number one reason people quit jobs because of their leader.
Yeah.
Do the research. It's true. People quit bosses, not jobs.
True. Yeah. Now, what are you doing to ensure you continue to grow and develop as a leader?
Educate yourself firsthand. I am a lifelong learner. I am a student of knowledge. One, you have to seek continual education. And I recently finished 3 huge courses at Harvard Executive Business School for Executives. Learning current trends, learning disruptive strategy, and learning all of the things that are facing us now, because there are a lot of people that are just not educated out there. I don't want to be one of them. I educate myself. I read. I always read the Forbes list of billionaires and so forth. Make sure I'm studying what books that they're reading. You can open that whole cover down there, and there's probably 50 of the most powerful books. I read them. I discuss them with the people that I lead. I share the books and the knowledge. And the other thing is travel. I make sure that I travel and I connect with different cultures. You cannot be successful if you cannot connect and interact with people. We live in Miami, Florida. This is not America. This is a whole separate country of itself. You have Eastern Europe, you have Asia, you have South America, you have everything in Miami. And if all you think is that you exist and the way you operate exists, it is impossible for you to stay current. It is impossible for you to lead a dynamic team. And that's what we need in business. You need a dynamic team. Your ability to communicate on these multiple different levels is essential for your success. So for me, education, make sure that I travel, make sure that I have a strong connection with people, and make sure that I'm waking up every day doing